Okay, perfect. So thank you everyone for coming today to our first ever Ada Lovelace panel. Ada Lovelace, of course, is a famous woman in science, laid a lot of the groundwork for computer science as we know it, even though computers did not exist during the time she was around. And we just wanted to bring a really great panel today together of some of our women on campus who work in the STEM fields. So I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves one at a time, but I'm just going to call you in the order that you are on the screen. So for me, so Kara, if you could just introduce yourself and what you do on campus.
My name is Kara Mcelrath, and I'm the Assistant Director of Client Services with Information Technology Services.
Amy?
Hi, I'm Amy McEwen. I'm an Associate Professor in Biology and Chair of Biology right now.
Dr. Andrews?
I'm Dr. Miranda Andrews. I'm from chemistry, and I'm an instructor in that department.
And I just realized I used everyone else's first names in your last name. Is it, Yifei?
Yifei, yeah.
Yifei, okay.
I'm Yifei Li. I'm with the Department of Mathematical Science. I started 2019, and I graduated from Washington University in St. Louis. I'm Assistant Professor of Mathematical Science.
Awesome. And Lucia?
Yes, Lucia Vasquez. I'm a professor in the biology department, and I'm also the interim associate vice chancellor for research and innovation.
Perfect. So we have some questions today, and these questions were actually put together by the students who work at the Women's Center. So these questions are from students. And so to start out, sort of, what do you think is the most, sorry, my bad. What do you think that you would give as advice to women who are studying or majoring in STEM programs? Anyone can jump in.
Well, I'll jump in there. I would say, one of the exciting things about STEM is that oftentimes we're preparing for and studying for jobs that don't even exist yet. And that's pretty amazing. So I would just encourage women to network your way to jobs, whether they exist or not. We talk about women being leaders, and that's a big component of STEM, and it certainly is. But just because you weren't born to lead doesn't mean you were born to follow. There is room in between to pave your own way. I mean, if you're a leader, that's awesome. But even if you're not a leader, that doesn't mean you're a follower, and there's still great things that you can contribute to and accomplish. So I would just, encourage you to use all of your network resources and, keep your mind open to possibilities that may not even exist now, but they're coming. And so that would be my advice.
I'll jump in. I also have the word network kind of in my answer, which is to develop a support network of people who really believe in your success. So if and that goes from friends, partners, mentors, teachers, all of that. And when I think of like my own trajectory, like so many particularly women helped me along the way, all the way back from when I was doing biochemistry in the lab with 2 female PIs, so I do really think like those support networks, at least in my personal history, have been very, very important.
That was basically the same as my answer, which was find your people, right? Whoever that might be. They may not be in the same major as you or the same program as you. They may not exactly look like you. But just find your people who, when you're wondering, was I treated a certain way because of implicit bias or just outright discrimination and bias, when you can find the people that you can talk to about that, and that's part of your support system, is those people that can help you figure out how to navigate that, and just people that, you don't even have to have a bad time to need people. You just people to go, yeah, that reaction's not working, but I know you're going to figure it out. Or yes, I know your plants die every time, but you're going to figure out what's causing, whatever it is, you need your people is what you need.
I was also gonna comment on the importance of having a good mentor. I think that's probably the most important thing for me, because throughout, especially the graduate school, that there are moments they encounter difficulties and obstacles, then you can feel the self-doubt that comes out whenever you see difficulties. And then that's the good time that you need to consult with your mentor. It's either your advisor or someone else, your close family or senior person in your same field. But it's very important that you have their support. And there was, because I was pregnant during my 3rd year in graduate school, and it was kind of difficult. Well, people say that when women get pregnant, their brain changes a bit. It might be true, I don't know, but I know that I became very forgetful and scatterbrained. And then one day I was going to heat up my food, but I hold the plate of food and opened up the fridge. And I was so frustrated with myself that I'm forgetting things, I'm doing the opposite thing. And then when I go back to my advisor, I was complaining. And then what he said is, well, you just described every mathematician, basically. So he's like, that's no big deal. I mean, a lot of mathematicians are scatterbrained. It doesn't mean you cannot do math. So that's that moment I felt that maybe I can keep doing this. I don't have to be just pregnant or just thinking about your family, and you can actually spend your time thinking about your family and thinking about math. And also after I graduate, before I graduate, after I give birth to the baby, I have to take care. And I took a break of 1.5 years. And it was a long period where I'm just only thinking about my kid, and I haven't had any time to think about math at all. And then it was difficult for me to come back to thinking about math again. And then it was my advisor's friend, who's also a female mathematician, and she wrote brilliant papers. And she's very humble as well. When I talked to her, she said that it took her 3 or 4 years to come back to research after she had children. So she said it's no big deal. You can always come back as long as you keep working on it. That's the kind of encouragement that make you feel that you can do it if you believe in yourself. And so you don't usually see it when you're at that moment, but when someone else tell you, and when you find a support network, then it's a great encouragement and motivate you to keep going.
Oh, like my comment relates to what Kara said. I mean, in terms of keeping your mind open and explore all kinds of possibilities. And I think one way of exploring for students is getting involved in undergraduate research. You might think that you want to go a certain pathway. For example, some of our students in bio, they think that they want to do medical school. But I think if they start exploring what other possibilities are out there, aside from medical school, you're going to see there are so many disciplines that are very fascinating. And as Kara was saying, some of these things are not even exist, or they're just in their infancy at this point. So that would be my advice. Also, take advantage of any support systems that the schools offers, like whether they are advisors, mentors, counseling center, rec center, everything. And you have to think about the journey. You have to think about the journey in a holistic way. So it's not only the education, but it's also important your mental health and your physical health.
Thank you. So kind of, I think there was a really good segue a moment ago, but so you're all in different fields sort of within STEM. And so in your opinion, what is the most rewarding part about your profession, career, research, however you want to look at it? Like what kind of keeps you going in that?
I think there are very different rewarding things. One of them is the kind of doing the science itself, when you can get to discover something new, something different, and just knowing that you are kind of contributing to the general knowledge. I think that's very rewarding. And it's part of the process, because at least for me, the other part of the rewarding aspect of being a scientist is being able to train students to guide them and teach them and show them that they don't need to be intimidated by the math or the chemistry involved in biology experiments. It's just, I think that's a very rewarding part.
I would add on to that, just the innovation. Like, I love being innovative. That leads to being helpful, you know, which is part of my role in IT. I'm never bored. There's never a rut. That makes it exciting for me. I've had those jobs, you know, especially in high school and college, as working my way through degree, where, you know, they're not exciting jobs. You do them because you need a paycheck, you got to pay tuition, you got to pay for room and board. But with my career, there's always something new, and I get to be innovative, and I like that. And I would just encourage all of you, just don't ever shrink yourself so that you can fit into small places and small minds. Grow. It's a big world. There's room. You fit. I promise. There's room for all of us.
Like what you said, that it's never boring. You're always seeing new things and learning new things, and the innovative part is it's the essential part in STEM. I would probably in math it works a little bit different. So for most of the time when you're working on the math research, you feel like you're in a forest. You don't know where to go, and you feel like you're just trying a different path, and you're constantly hitting on walls most of the time. But then suddenly you pick the right path, and you can see things clearly, and you can realize, oh, I've solved that problem. Then that's that moment, just the very, very exciting moment, and the feeling of achievement is really that's the most rewarding part for me.
Yeah, I think I agree with what everyone else had said. I mean, I love being a professor in part because I love to interact with students. So teaching is one of my one of my joys, and so I'm really glad to be at a place where I get to interact with students that way. And then also, as Dr. Vasquez and others said, in terms of mentoring, just for me professionally, I really enjoy that. And I think other people have said, just never a boring day, right? So that's really good to if you've worked in fast food or something, it's quite different. And I did write down also publishing, because it's one of those things that I remember when I was like, there's no way I will ever be able to publish anything, you know, back when I was younger, and I read these papers and I was so in awe. And so like going through those stages where you actually like have the work and you work with colleagues and you submit the papers, and it's just, when it finally gets published, it is just amazing. It never gets old. So that's just, I love that.
So I'm an instructor, so I don't really have the research and the service part. But I, like Aim said, I love to teach, right? That's why I jumped at the opportunity to be an instructor at a smaller institution. It's what I wanted to do. So the most rewarding thing for me is I'm very Socratic, especially in lab. So I live for those aha moments when students ask me a question and I can kind of circumlocute, I kind of walk around it and ask them smaller questions until they can answer their own question. I live for that aha moment. It makes my day. It's the best part of my job.
So on that note, thinking back to sort of your time in undergrad or grad or whenever you can think back for, what was this is worded differently in our questions, but I'm kind of thinking like, what do you think the biggest obstacles are for students in general, but women especially, studying STEM? What do you see as professors if you teach, or as instructors, or what do you remember being a big obstacle for you? And how did you overcome it, and how do you think they could overcome it?
Well, I can jump in here. I see this a lot just in the IT field. Besides working for ITS, I also teach as an adjunct. So I teach for teacher education, MIS, and educational leadership. And, I have lots of students in all three programs that are experts in their field. Their field is not technology. And, especially in the teaching fields, most students who go into teaching do so because they love school and they like to teach and they like to learn and they're good at it. And sometimes they get to technology class and all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, this is hard. Like, normally school is easy for me and I totally get it. And this is uncomfortable. And so I think the most helpful habit that I learned early on, and I'm so grateful that I did, is that it's okay to feel uncomfortable, and growing isn't easy. You know, like we talk about growing pains in kids, like who physically hurt as they're growing taller and bigger. And like we can all accept that, but we seem to struggle to accept that sometimes growing intellectually is also painful and also tough. And I think we just all need to accept that it's okay to be uncomfortable while we're learning new things and growing, but it's worth it. And, sometimes I'll ask myself, even now, I mean, I certainly did when I was younger, but, even now at this stage in my life, I'll ask myself, would you be happy if 5 years from now, you were exactly where you are right now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now? And then, I ask myself, well, what am I waiting for then? Tiptoe if you must, but, take a step, don't be afraid just because it's uncomfortable or it's a little painful, just go for it.
Yeah, along those same lines, anybody who's had a class with Dr. Morrish knows about fixed mindset versus growth mindset. If any of those students were here, they would roll their eyes probably at it, but it's true, right? You, especially in STEM, you will encounter people that tell you, well, you're just not cut out for this, or very fixed mindset, right? You just don't have what it takes, whatever it's going to be, right? I had my first organic instructor flat out told me, I don't think you're cut out for a chemistry major. I don't think this is for you. And I kind of want to go, well, meh, because my dissertation is on physical organic chemistry. And, so I was able to figure out what I needed to work on, and I worked on it. And I had to get over that fixed mindset because Dr. Carr was in the back of my head for a long time. I just don't think this is for you. But, if you really truly work on that growth mindset and know that you can master something if you spend enough time practicing it, whatever it is, then it doesn't matter when you encounter people like Dr. Carr that tell you you can't do it, because you know that you can, and you just kind of feel bad for them that they have a fixed mindset. So
similar to what Miranda said, that I also feel that maybe some female students might have like their family members not believing them can actually do STEM. And I had a similar situation where when I told my dad that I want to study math in college, and he's like, why do you want to do that? Can you even do it? And but after a few years, then I proved myself that I can do. So I was also thinking, if you do have family members who don't really support you from the beginning, just keep on doing what you're doing, and you can prove they're wrong using your actions. And you have to believe yourself. And again, that when you encounter difficulties, those other people's doubt in you and your own doubt will come through. And that's when you need look back to your past achievement, and talk to your advisors or mentor, and also know that this is a difficult field and you're going to encounter some obstacles. It doesn't mean you cannot pass them. It just means you can try harder. And so some difficult problem might take months or weeks or even years to be able to work it out. So don't be discouraged when you actually encounter a difficulty.
Yeah, on that note, I was going to say that one of the obstacles can be just the difficulty of some coursework, right? So in biology, I'll look to Miranda, chemistry a lot of times is very challenging for some of the biology students, or the math that's required if you go on to, in certain programs to take calculus and things like that. And so I just remember there was once I think it was on Twitter, where all of these people who are now like, they have PhDs and they're PIs, and they were like, okay, everybody, what's your lowest grade in the science course, from undergrad? And everyone was like, I got a C in OChem or whatever it was, right? Just so like people know that, they, it wasn't their top course, but they did well in all the biology courses. They went on to get into graduate school. And so don't let one thing make you feel like, oh, okay, that's it, right? Because, there's always, there's always, the kind of the growth mindset that Miranda was talking about, right? You can always learn more and do better and kind of come back.
And I think from my perspective, I think when I kind of faced some obstacles was in my PhD, mainly because of the language barrier. When I started my PhD, my English was not very good. So that was a barrier. And so well, what I did was, well, study, yeah, read, get more books, and I have never taken an English writing course, and so I have to learn on the spot. So I guess my piece of advice is keep going, just don't let any of these obstacles stop you. Just remember what is your goal and just keep going. It's tough at times, but if you just keep going, eventually you'll get there.
I don't know if we were talking about that habit question still, but I put down make nerdy friends, which I guess kind of ties into support network too. But I think because nerdy friends are good because first they can help you with things, right? Because if they're like math nerds, they can help you with your calculations or whatever. But also they will help you if you are struggling on piece, right? Then they'll be able to say, oh no, you can do it. If you're feeling down about yourself, right? Then they'll remind you of your goal and they'll believe in you and push you towards your goal. So that's really useful. Plus they'll let you go study when you need to go study.
Well, on that note, because that was going to be my next question, Amy, so you're fine. But since we're still on the topic of undergrad, before we get a little bit more into field stuff again, what was a habit that you picked up or got you through during that time, or was that kept you most focused and motivated during your years in college?
So I also had nerdy friends, and they did help a lot. I will say that. That was very helpful, and really, so this is kind of piggybacking off two things Dr. Vasquez said, which was, earlier she mentioned having a goal and, just kind of pressing towards it. So there was that, but she also mentioned kind of trying new things. I think Kara mentioned that as well. I just decided that I wanted to be a supplemental instruction leader in undergrad. It was an easier way to make some money, get a stipend and that kind of stuff. And so I was a chemistry major. It just made sense to be an SI leader for chemistry. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So that's where I realized I want to teach, and I want to teach at a college or a university level institution. This is what I want to do. And so I just looked into what do I have to do? And I was like, okay, I'm going to be most marketable at an institution like that if I have a PhD in chemistry. So that's what I need to do. And so I was an SI leader for about 3.5 years, I think. It was a while. I was an SI leader, and I loved every minute of it. I applied to grad school knowing that my end goal was going to be to teach at a college or a university. And so that was what motivated me the whole time. This is what I want to do, and this is what I have to do to get there. And so that's what helped me.
Well, and kind of just the opposite of Miranda, I got my undergrad in education, so I wanted to be a teacher, but I also knew I wanted more. Although unlike Miranda, I didn't know what I wanted more of. I just knew that it was going to be more than this. And so I needed to pick a field that would grow with that I wouldn't be stuck somewhere, especially because I didn't really know what that more was, just that it was more than I had already experienced. The world's a big place. I knew that. And so I think that was just my motivation, is that I didn't want to be stuck in a rut where I couldn't experience more of those things. And so that meant trying new things, which is really outside of my comfort zone. I grew up on a dairy farm in northern Indiana, not a big city with lots of opportunities. So I got my undergrad in Indianapolis. And so that was a huge change for me from a dairy farm to Indy. And so that was a big step, a leap for me out of my comfort zone, just to try things. And, now you talk to the people I work with and they're like, my gosh, Kara, is there nothing that you will say no to? I mean, I'm not even sure you're the right person for this, and yet you'll still say yes to it. And that's been a really good habit for me. I'm in over my head sometimes, but I'm rarely regretful that I said yes to something.
I think that first you have to be learning a subject that you really like, you're passionate about. So if you don't like the subject you're working on, you're probably not gonna really go into the STEM field. But once you find that this is something that you're really interested in, then keep an open mind. Keep that as a goal, but still keep an open mind and try new things as well. And like we're here in UIS, but we're not just stuck here in UIS. There are other opportunities. If you're a math student, you can they are the one thing, I went to a very small liberal arts college in Kentucky, and then everybody's saying that the Brea bubble. So everybody's in that college town is just that college. There's basically nothing else except for a Walmart. And then if you don't keep an open mind, just think about this is where all I need to do is my coursework, then I don't know how far I could go. But then I tried other things. I tried to study abroad, and there's I spent a whole semester in Budapest. It's the Budapest semester in mathematics, and learning a lot of more higher level math, and that basically opened up my mind. Because before that, I thought, oh, okay, this is math, simple calculus, and abstract algebra is not too difficult either. And then when you go somewhere else and taking higher level courses, you realize, wow, there are a lot in your subject that you don't know at all. And then I see that there's a huge field that I need to explore that make me very excited to go into this field and try to learn more, instead of just staying in a small bubble that I'm comfortable with. So also, but first you have to really like the field you're in, so that when you see new things, you don't get scared, instead of you're getting excited instead of scared. So I guess my advice would be keep trying new things, and who knows, it might lead you to somewhere else. Well, right now, a lot of people in math right now are doing data science. That's the hot new field right now. But just 5 or 10 years ago, nobody knows that. But who knows, well, now when you're doing a math PhD, you can end up earning big money doing data science. Just that's new things are always coming, and keep an open mind.
My comment here is going back to the habits. I think for me, the habit that helped me succeed through college and through my doctoral degree was commitment. You know, I kind of really deep in my heart, I knew I was committed to completing my goals, and that commitment meant spending hours, as we know, hours and hours studying, and involved also some sacrifices, because instead of spending a lot of time with friends and family, I was studying. I need to study for an exam, or I was doing field work, or whatever needed to be done. So yeah, there are lots of sacrifices that you have to make, but then at the end, I mean, you reach your goal, and it's very rewarding when you get there. So that's kind of like in terms of habits.
So our next couple questions are just really big, broad questions relating to our topic, specifically about, what is it to be a woman in STEM? But what do you, I think often we come from a deficit about like what's hard about being a woman in STEM, but what do you like about being a woman in STEM? What do you think, how does that affect your approach, you think?
I find it easier to make friends with women in STEM. So there are not many women in mathematics, and when they hold like a conference or a week-long workshop or some longer time workshop, and it's easier to make friends with other female mathematicians, and it's easier to talk to them. I feel everybody is so friendly. Maybe that's because we don't have too many. And then also there are support programs for women in mathematics. They have some research programs, and they have even fundings for those. And there are no summer research program, especially for men. So that might be a privilege of being a woman.
So for me, one of the things I really enjoy is that, well, I do field biology. So just doing my day-to-day, I really kind of go against a lot of the stereotypes of what is feminine, right? So, I mean, a lot of field biology, it involves like getting into hip waders and catching mice and getting completely muddy. And, you know, and this is like who I am since, I mean, you can ask, you know, my mom when I was little, that's just, I've always loved to catch frogs and everything, you know, so true to my true nature. But I find that it's fun to kind of throw people's expectations a little off, you know. Sometimes, you know, I'll come out of the woods and, you know, they'll look horrible from the field and people be like, oh my God, that's a woman, you know. So I find that part fun.
I mentioned that I grew up in a dairy farm. So my dad was a farmer. My mom was a teacher, very traditional careers, right? My mom went to college, which, you know, this was back in the 60s. So it's not that it was unusual for a woman to go to college, but back in the 60s, a woman went to college to either be a teacher or a nurse. Those were pretty much the only two fields for women then. So I just like knowing that I have those limitless options. You know, I like knowing that my field could grow with me. I can move to a different field. It's just, that's exciting for me. And it's something that, you know, is still relatively new. And I don't know, I think that's really cool. I know a couple of days ago, I was talking to someone on the phone, like just a help desk call, and we were waiting for his computer to reboot, a UIS employee. And, you know, computers are slow sometimes, so it felt like forever while his computer was rebooting. And we were just chatting, and he was asking, you know, it was like 9 o'clock in the morning. He was asking, you know, what I'd been working on that day. So I was, you know, just telling him about what was going on. And then there was this awkward silence. And he was like, oh my gosh, I've been stuck at home with 4 kids under the age of 10 for 7 months. And I have never had a morning as crazy as you just described. And I love that. So that's what I love about being a woman in STEM, just all of those opportunities. And that's exciting to me.
Yeah, I want to comment, like my comment is similar to Kara, just being a woman in STEM, there's so many possibilities, you know, and you can go so many different directions. I was talking with a friend, and I described it, that for me, like being in the lab is like being in a playground, you know. I just feel so happy, and then knowing that you know, I get to do some of these experiments, or even read a paper, learn something new. That's really exciting. And at the same time, I agree with Amy's, with Dr. McEwen's comment, in terms of going against stereotypes, you know. People who feel like, okay, women are not capable of doing X. So just kind of showing, yes, it can be done. So those are kind of the things I really enjoy about women, being a woman in STEM.
I don't know, I feel like students, I mean, sometimes it's negative, right? But I feel like students just interact with me differently than they would a male instructor or a male professor. I think there's, I don't know, there's an approachability that I have that maybe some other instructors or professors don't, and I enjoy that. I also enjoy, because a majority of the courses that I teach are labs, and it's kind of stupid how much of maintaining a chemistry lab is like tinkering with things and like changing pump oil and putting antifreeze in this thing, and it's kind of strange, and a lot like Dr. McEwen and Dr. Vasquez said, like just doing those things that aren't stereotypically feminine or whatever it is. So, you know, you come up, you've got pump oil on the side of your face and you're like, oh, it's fixed now, you know, whatever it is. It's just fun to do that mechanical stuff, and kind of, you know, bump that stereotype or whatever it is. But I feel like students interact with me differently, and most of the time I think it's better, because I'm a woman in STEM, instead of a man. So I enjoy that.
So on that note, how do you think your field specifically would benefit from having more women involved?
I say that a lot. Oh, go ahead.
No. Well, I was going to say, it's just adding diversity. You know, diversity is very valuable. I mean, a different way of thinking, a different way of approaching problem solving is just, I think it's just a different way of doing things. And I think that all of us can benefit from that, that the disciplines can benefit from that.
Absolutely. That's what I was going to say. Men and women, we think differently, and that's
Mhm.
not bad. That's a great thing. I see it a lot in the IT field because sometimes, we may be developing an application and you get stuck on something, like you're stuck and you can't figure it out. And it just takes looking at it a little bit differently. And so that kind of dynamic to leverage the differences in the way we think helps us be more productive and more innovative.
Mathematics also requires a lot of innovation and creativity and hard work. Women doesn't lack any of those. So, and creativity have to come from different people that the collective knowledge will create more in a discipline, no matter what discipline it is. And historically, there are not many female in mathematics. Actually, historically, they do not allow women even to learn math, like very old times. And then like even Ada Lovelace, she was she wrote the first computer program basically. And then there are a group of people who say she didn't read it. She didn't write it. She copied it from her mentor. But I think after a while, after a lot of dispute, they do decide that she wrote all of those computer programs, and she also imagined that there was one day we're going to have a computer that can actually write programs, and we can have computer programming. And we didn't even have computer before that, and she even imagined that. So without her, we might maybe computer will come in 1 century later. I don't know, but but this is kind of a different mindset, different approach of things that can bring in a lot of creativity. If we're excluding women from math, then we're excluding half of the population. So of course, there's the collective brilliance will be fewer.
So I think a lot of safety related things. The best example that I know of were actually airbags. So when airbags were first implemented in cars, the engineering team that worked on that was all men at the time. And so the introduction of airbags into cars did reduce fatalities among men, but it didn't really do that among women. And in fact, in cases where women would have survived the accident without an airbag, the airbag was still killing them. And you just wonder, if a woman had been on that engineering team, on that research and development team, would she have said, okay, we're making assumptions about height and weight and center of gravity and all that. We're making assumptions based on the male body. There are so many instances of that throughout STEM, especially in the engineering field, but really everywhere, where the default is male. And so that's how we design things. And then, right now PPE is a big problem. PPE is designed for men for the most part. And then the only adjustments that are really made to PPE for women is they treat women like small men, and it's not quite the same. So right, things don't fit right, masks aren't fitting right, the different hazmat suits and other sort of personal protective equipment is not fitting women the way that it should. So you just wonder how much easier of a time would we have with some things? How much better would things be designed if we had encouraged women to work in the STEM field earlier than we have? And right, there are still fields where we're still struggling with that. Chemistry is notorious right now, roughly half. It bounces back and forth whether it's a little more men or a little more women. Right, we're assuming a gender binary right now, that are getting chemistry degrees. It bounces back and forth who's getting a little bit more than the other. But after undergrad, that falls off dramatically. So, right, that's the leaky pipeline in STEM. So you just wonder how different would this place be if we'd had that diversity of thought and approach and creativity and all of that stuff? How could that have contributed to us being maybe in better shape technologically as a society, whatever it is? So you just wonder.
That was, sorry, I didn't want to cut anyone off. So actually I'm trying to see if there were any more questions, because I actually had a question, and I feel like I'm putting one of you on the spot because I don't know everyone else's exact institutional background. But I'll share something about myself and why I want this question asked for our hopefully now and future listeners of this. So obviously at UIS, we're an institution where we have quite a few STEM majors, but we have we're a liberal arts school, right? So we have a really big diversity of majors. So even if, say, a student is a female majoring in comp sci, she might be able to make female friends or seek female mentors outside her field, even if she's having a hard time within her field. I, as an undergrad, went to a school that was 75% male because I went to a tech school. And I believe there's at least one other person on this who has spent at least part of their institutional time at a tech school, possibly others. So what advice would you give? Because some of our students may go on and they may, they may go to MIT, they may go to Texas Tech, they may go to Missouri S&T, just to name some schools, Colorado School of Mines. What are advice you could give them when they go and maybe they're getting discouraged within their own major and having trouble finding female role models and mentors?
So I struggled with that. I went to a really large institution for my graduate degree. So I went to Texas Tech, which has roughly 40,000 students total. The chemistry department at the time was roughly 30 full-time faculty, tenure track, and two were women. They recently hired another one. And so I mentioned earlier, find your people. It is discouraging when you can't find people who look like you, right? I wanted to be a part of a department that had lots of women in it. I wanted that, and I had trouble finding that. But I found a lot of male allies. Sometimes they didn't. My PhD advisor is a great example of somebody who just really wants the world to be a meritocracy. There were some things that when I would talk about the struggles that a woman in science has, he struggled with that. He had some cognitive dissonance that he experienced, and I don't know how he resolved it. But I found other people that I could talk to those things about. My first paper, it took us over a year to get it published. And one of the last things that we did was I changed the format of my name so that it didn't look feminine anymore. We changed a couple other things. We changed a couple other variables to use scientific method talk. So I can't say for sure that that's what helped, but that was one of the last things that happened. And I remember my PhD advisor, when I told him I'm going to do this on this paper, his face just dropped. He says, but it's your name. Because he couldn't imagine a world where the fact that I have a very feminine first name could have been standing in the way and could have been part of what was giving us trouble.
Wow.
So, I mean, you encounter people that they struggle with trying to see that, not because it's not out of any sort of malice, but even so, find your people. They might be in a slightly different field. They might be staff that works at, we had something that was called STEM Core, which was the Center for, now I don't even remember what it stood for. But right, there were lots of people that were passionate about STEM education, and a lot of those people looked into the things that get in the way of women succeeding in STEM, and most of those are external factors. And then some of it's internalized stuff that comes from those external factors. So just finding they exist, and we're in the age of the internet, so you can find all sorts of people that you can vent to, you can talk about this stuff, but I cannot stress enough how important it was to me to just find my people that I could talk to about this stuff, because it's to be alone when you struggle with that stuff, I think makes it 10 times worse, and it makes it seem insurmountable. But you can always ask for help. You can always find people that will help you get through stuff.
I'd like to share, my experience during college. So I was, some of you probably don't know, I did my undergraduate degree in Mexico, and I was in a program where it was chemical engineering and biology. You have to take the same classes for the first 2 years. So basically I was with a bunch of chemical engineers. There were not too many females, and I just became friends with a bunch of guys. And so I I remember something really funny. The one time I went and visited a friend, and my male friends were with me. There were about 7 male friends. They were really close friends. And somebody remembers saying, why are you bringing bodyguards? just because, I mean, every time I will be hanging out with all of them all the time, and it was great. I mean, sometimes, yeah, you don't find what you would wish. I mean, in this case, other females, but still, I mean, these were really good people, were really good guys, and just don't get discouraged. Just kind of, as Miranda said, find your people. It might not be other girls or other ladies, but maybe guys who are going to help you.
And I would add to that.
Oh, go ahead, Kara.
I was just going to add to that to, seek out opportunities. Don't just wait for something to be offered, or, whether it's an internship or, a program like that, seek it out, find what your passion is, go for it. We have nothing to lose. So don't be afraid, just see what's out there, ask for it. If you got a group of people, that helps too. It gives you that support structure, certainly. But seek out those opportunities and grow with them.
Yeah, I was going to pretty much piggyback on what Dr. Vasquez and Dr. Andrews was saying, and that I think that all women in STEM, sometimes like you don't even realize how much of the time you spend in these kind of very, very male dominated situations. I remember once going to a conference, this was doing a postdoc, and I was going to all of these different talks, and then I walked into a room. It might have been like a women in STEM talk or something. And all of a sudden the room was all full of women. And then I just realized that I hadn't been in a woman dominated environment in like, I don't know how long, So I do think like you develop methods, right? And you see, and you find allies, and, there's a lot of great, men out there who really do want you to be successful, and you'll find them in that environment. But that's also good to find, even, they may not be in STEM, but, find, as Dr. Andrews was saying, find your people, so that they can support you, in those other ways as well. So you can, even in a very male dominated environment, you can make it.
When I was in undergrad, the college I went to is really small. We had how many? 1,400 people in total. It's not that we didn't have many female math students. It's that we didn't have many math students at all. We had a few each year, and maybe 2 or 3 math students each year. So what would we do was I had my best friend in college is my roommate, but then my closest math friends are 3 people from lower years than me. So we formed a study group and we worked together. And I did a lot of tutoring because I'm the senior of that group. So, but you do find the support group, and all of us went to graduate school, and I think one of them still doing her PhD, and the other all graduated with PhDs. So I find that forming a study group is really beneficial for all of us. I don't know if we didn't form the study group, we didn't encourage if we didn't encourage each other during those years, I don't know if some of us will actually do a PhD or not. But it's very mutually beneficial to form a group of friends who have a same interest, even though you might not be in the same year.
Well, thank you all so much. Is there anything that you all didn't get to talk about that you really wanted to add tonight to this discussion, or anything that comes to mind? I want to make sure.
I would just encourage all of you guys to just always remember to believe in you. You're going to do great things. Be fierce in what you're passionate about. Being brave doesn't mean being solitary. Find your people. Ask for help and support. We're all in this together. I'm excited that you guys are interested in the STEM field. Like it's a great place to be. It's a great place to grow. I love it. I'm thrilled to have you join us here.
I want a button that just plays Kara telling me encouragement every morning.
I want to say that STEM field can lead to a lot of opportunities that you might not even know yet. So just keep work hard on your coursework and right now and keep a solid background and then look for other opportunities and keep an open mind. And because you might be doing something slightly related to what you're doing in the future that's really rewarding for you, but just keep an open mind and your opportunities is going to come.
And along being, keeping an open mind, don't be afraid to ask for help. I remember talking with some of my students and saying that they felt dumb if they were going to kind of some sessions where concepts need to be explained to them. And it's like, no, just make use of all the resources that you have available and don't be afraid to ask for questions.
Yeah, I had at some point I had in one of my answers, swallow your pride, right? So it's all, you know, you always have to just admit, like, I am so lost, right? You know, believe it or not, I used to be like the person who like never wanted to raise their hand in lecture because I was just terrified. And, you know, I had to just overcome that, like, you know, and some of that was, I was much more comfortable in a group of friends admitting like I was lost, you know, and so yeah, that is a part of it is, you know, if you need help on something, go and get help. And there's people who will be thrilled to get you over that obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you all so much. We really enjoyed having you. And I guess at this point, Carrie, you can stop recording. So